Mike Fink, the generous captain. Introduction: the man who challenged the river. Back then, the American West was still wild. The vast rivers like the Ohio and Mississippi were the lifelines connecting the sparse towns. On those surging waters, there was a man who made everyone look up whenever he appeared. That man was Mike Fink, the generous captain, the self-proclaimed king of the rivers. Mike was born in the upper Ohio River, where the winters were bitterly cold and the summers were as humid as a steamer. Since childhood, Mike was famous in the village for his excellent shooting skills. It is said that when he was only 10 years old, the boy Mike could shoot walnuts from 3 times the distance of an adult. But shooting skills were only part of it. What really made Mike stand out was his mouth that was always moving, telling unbelievable stories, but no one could bear to leave halfway. As Mike grew older, he asserted himself on the river. He joined the raft crew, large wooden boats that transport goods from upstream to downstream. On each trip, amidst the rushing water, storms, and countless lurking dangers, Mike was not only a skilled boatman but also an inspiration for the whole crew with his tear-jerking, boastful stories. He often sat on the cargo box, waving a bottle of wine, loudly telling about his lifetime achievements. There was the story of him single-handedly defeating a herd of bears with just his 2 fists. There was the story of Mike racing with crocodiles and forcing them to bow their heads and beg for mercy. The listeners both laughed out loud and were skeptical, but no one dared to challenge Mike, because he was not just a talker. Mike was truly a muscular man, strong enough to lift a 100-pound cargo box onto his shoulders, walking around as casually as if he were strolling in the park. Big-hearted and fierce, Mike loved dares. He once bet his crew that he could shoot the rope holding the boat down with a single shot, and did. He once declared that he would drink an entire barrel of wine in one night and still be able to steer the boat as steady as ever. The result was that he was drunk, but the boat was still drifting in the right direction, thanks to Mike tying himself to the rudder. Nothing was impossible for Mike. If the river was rough, he would shout into the wind, "Hey, God! If you want to fight, I'm here." If a stranger dared to laugh at Mike's boast, a wrestling, shooting, or even drinking contest would soon follow. And most of them would lose to Mike Fink. Mike was not only a symbol of personal strength but also a representative of the American frontier spirit of that time, reckless, free, not willing to submit to anyone or anything. The river for him was not only a path but also a battlefield, a stage, a place where he showed his arrogance to life. People along the river often told each other, "If today you hear laughter echoing from the distant river, Mike Fink is definitely there." There were also nights when the bright moon hung over the sparkling water. They sat together telling stories about Mike, about the times he fought hand-to-hand with river pirates, about jumping from a boat into the water to save his comrades, or about the jubilant parties where he was the soul of the fun. That era has passed, but the name Mike Fink still waves forever in the memories of those who love the river. A man with great boastful stories that transcended the boundaries of reality to become a legend. If you also love such great stories, don't forget to like, subscribe and share to continue exploring Mike Fink's heroic journey. Chapter 1: Mike Fink and the Ohio River's Great Shot. The Ohio River in early summer has a beauty that is both gentle and wild. The water sparkles in the sunlight, fish jump, and the wind blows wildly from upstream. On a wide stretch of the river where boaters often gather before each trip, Mike Fink stands proudly on the deck of his boat, hands on hips, eyes scanning the crowd like a general at a general's review. That day, Mike showed off a brand new gun, shiny in the sunlight. He declared, "Listen, this gun hits the smallest hole you can think of. To prove it, I dare you to find a target that I can't hit from 100 paces away." The crowd laughed, half believing, half doubting. A young man with a fierce face stepped out from the crowd. He held up a small silver coin, sparkling in the sunlight, and said loudly, "If you hit this silver coin from the other side of the river, I'll buy you a barrel of wine." Mike burst out laughing, his laughter resounding like thunder. "Just a barrel of wine? I want a second barrel for my friends." Wasting no time, Mike jumped into the small boat and rowed out to the middle of the river. He chose a stretch of water about 100 paces wide. Placing the silver coin on a wooden stake protruding from the water, he returned to the shore, where the crowd was eagerly watching. Mike loaded his gun, his eyes narrowed, his lips curled into a confident smile. A strong wind blew, causing ripples on the water's surface. People whispered, "This is going to be hard to shoot." But Mike was not the least bit intimidated. He stomped his foot as if to center his weight, then raised his gun. Bang! The sound of the gun went off loudly, echoing in the blue sky. The whole riverbank held its breath. When the gunpowder cleared, people saw that the silver coin was no longer on the wooden stake. A young man ran to the water's edge, scooped up the coin that had just sunk, and shouted, "Right in the middle!" A round hole right in the middle of the silver coin. Cheers erupted, like waves crashing on the shore. Mike Fink put his hands on his hips, raised his head and laughed arrogantly. "Whoever still dares to doubt Mike Fink, come out here." No one dared to step forward. Many people even competed to invite Mike to drink, shake hands, and touch the divine gun. From that day on, Mike Fink's reputation as the super shooter of the Ohio River spread far and wide to other riverside towns. But Mike did not stop there. After his famous shot, he also thought of a new boast. "I will shoot out the candle from 200 paces away, and without spilling the wax." It sounds crazy, but for Mike Fink, anything crazy can come true. That night, by the riverbank, a small candle was lit, trembling in the wind. Mike stood twice as far away as he had been that morning. The crowd was dead silent, breathless with excitement. Mike raised his gun, aimed straight at the tiny flame. Bang! The light went out. People ran to check. The candle was still intact, only the flame was blown out by the wind caused by the passing bullet. The cheers this time were even louder than in the morning. People surrounded Mike, hailing him as a hero. Mike shrugged, laughing. It's a small matter. For Mike Fink, anything that can be seen can be shot. That night, the entire riverbank turned into a grand party. People were singing and dancing, while Mike sat in the middle of the circle, holding a barrel of wine, and kept telling more unbelievable stories, from fighting a grizzly bear to swimming with an alligator. People may be skeptical, but after what they had witnessed with their own eyes, no one dared to challenge Mike Fink again. Because for Mike, the Ohio River was not just home. It was a stage, a battlefield, a place where he asserted himself as an invincible person. If you find Mike Fink admirable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to continue following his unique bragging in the following chapters. Chapter 2: Mike Fink and the Unique Yacht Race. When Mike Fink's name became famous all along the Ohio River, the other captains were both admiring and a little annoyed. They said to each other, "That guy is really good, but he talks too much. It's time to show him the world." A plan was drawn up. Organize the biggest yacht race ever. Boats from all over the place poured in, from fast merchant ships, heavy ships, to the best rowers in the area. Mike Fink, of course, not only participated but also bragged from the beginning. "Your whole team together can't beat me alone. I'll race blindfolded, even with my hands tied behind my back." The crowd laughed, someone taunted. "Mike, don't talk nonsense. Show us a real hero." The race was scheduled for the next morning, starting at Old Landing, down Little Creek, through 3 famous dangerous bends. Whoever crossed the finish line first would be crowned King of the River. That morning, the sky was clear, the water smooth as glass. Hundreds of people crowded along both banks, cheering loudly. Mike Fink stood in the middle of the boats, on a homemade raft, simple, just a few large logs tied together with rope. He raised his hand to greet everyone, his mouth smiling brightly. "Get ready to smoke my back." The starting gun sounded. The boats shot out like arrows. Each team rowed frantically, shouting, trying to get ahead. Mike was still leisurely. He just leaned on a long pole, occasionally poking the bottom of the river, pushing the raft gently. Many people sneered. "If he keeps going so slow, he'll definitely lose." But Mike just winked and whispered, "Let's see who laughs last." When the other boats rushed into the first bend, where the current was strong and the reefs were jagged, something unexpected happened. The boats were too fast to steer, ran aground, or crashed into rocks. Mike, with his low raft, just gently glided through the rapids, ignoring all obstacles. He threw his head back and laughed loudly. Slow and steady, do you understand? Not stopping there, at the second bend, where the waves were strong and the wind was strong, Mike showed off another trick. He took out a short oar and started rowing in a circular motion. The raft spun, taking advantage of the strong current to increase its speed. From afar, Mike looked like a small tornado rushing forward. The crowd on the shore was amazed, then burst into thunderous applause. But the most challenging part was still waiting at the end. Little Creek, famous for its dense reeds, shallow water, and mud. Heavy boats quickly got stuck. People jumped in to push but could only move a hand's breadth. What about Mike Fink? He threw away his oars, jumped into the water, using his own body as a motor. Mike dove under the raft, carrying the raft on his back, diving and pushing. People only saw Mike's small raft glide lightly through the reeds, not stuck at all. The crowd was stunned, mouths agape. Is he a man or a fish? After only a few minutes, Mike Fink's raft crossed Little Creek and headed straight for the finish line. The whole riverbank erupted in cheers. Mike stepped ashore, soaked, holding his shabby hat high, shouting, "Who is the king of the river? It's Mike Fink." No one dared to argue. The captains who had once challenged Mike could only scratch their heads and laugh, then clap their hands in approval. That day, Mike Fink was awarded the King of the River trophy, a simple wooden trophy, but to him, it was more precious than any treasure. Mike hugged the trophy, laughed out loud, and then told dozens of other legendary stories about the times he competed in swimming with sharks, wrestled with bears, and even rode waves like a horse. Believe it or not, you will laugh at the way Mike turned his life into a humorous epic. Mike Fink, the generous captain, who never loses, because for him, losing is not in the dictionary. Do you think Mike Fink is awesome? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to watch even more hot bragging in the next chapter. Chapter 3: Mike Fink and the Strangest Gunfight in the West. After his glorious victory in the boat race, Mike Fink's reputation grew even more famous. People said that in addition to his ability to row the raft like a champion, Mike was also a famous marksman. A bullet in his hand would be difficult for even a small mosquito to escape. But, as usual, the more rumors spread, the more people wanted to challenge Mike. One day, in a busy riverside tavern, a tall, pockmarked man, calling himself Big Tom, loudly challenged Mike. "I heard you're a good shot. Why don't we test your skills and see who's the real king of marksmanship?" The crowd immediately stopped laughing. The atmosphere became heavy. Everyone knew that Big Tom was no pushover. He once took down a grizzly bear with a single shot. What about Mike Fink? He took another sip of beer, then leisurely put the cup down on the table. Let's compete. But we have to play well, otherwise it's boring. Big Tom narrowed his eyes. What do you want to bet? He grinned. If I lose, I'll wear a hat made of old shoes for a week. And if you lose, you have to row for me for free during the flood season. The crowd burst into laughter. Everyone knew that rowing for hire was the hardest job. Just thinking about it made Big Tom feel like he was tying a rope around his neck. The two agreed on the rules. Each of them would shoot 5 times at a tiny coin hanging in the middle of the yard. The coin spun in the wind. If he was just a little off balance, the bullet would miss its target. Big Tom fired first. He swung his gun, adjusting his stance in a very professional manner. Boom! The first shot missed. The second shot hit the edge of the coin, shaking it violently. Third, fourth, fifth shot, only one grazed the edge of the coin. The crowd cheered, good, but not too impressive. It was Mike Fink's turn. He walked out, still with a carefree look, even whistling as he walked. Mike threw his hat on the ground, saluted the crowd. Watch this, boys. Mike pulled out his gun, an old flintlock that he jokingly called Mrs. Bear. Without aiming carefully, without adjusting for long, Mike just raised it and bang! The coin was hit right in the middle, flying away like a small spark. Before the cheers could stop, Mike fired a second shot. This time, he also turned his back, raised the gun over his shoulder, and hit the spare coin that the organizers had hung up. The crowd was stunned, mouths agape. The third shot, Mike stood on one leg, holding a beer in the other hand, shooting with only one hand. Hit again. The coin broke in two and fell everywhere. Big Tom's face was purple with anger. The fourth shot, Mike was more mischievous. He signaled the crowd to throw the coin into the air. As soon as the coin flew up, Mike fired. The bullet stuck straight into the spinning coin. Finally, Mike came up with a crazy idea. Put the coin on the top of a close friend's head. The crowd shouted to stop him, but Mike just winked. Don't worry, I value his head more than money. The friend closed his eyes tightly, trembling. Mike slowly raised the gun, held his breath, and bang! The coin was blown away, but his friend's hair did not move at all. The crowd exploded in applause and whistles. Mike Fink tipped his hat and bowed low like a veteran circus performer. Big Tom was speechless. With no other choice, he scratched his head and walked forward, silently signing a commitment to row a boat for Mike during the flood season. Mike put his arm around Big Tom's shoulder, grinning. Don't worry, I'll let you row from dawn to dusk, as healthy as exercising. From that day on, the story of Mike Fink, the legendary shooter, was further embellished. It was rumored that Mike once shot an apple off a treetop hundreds of steps away, and once shot off a strand of hair from a girl knitting a scarf without startling her. What was the truth? Who knows? But every time Mike Fink told a story, his eyes sparkled, his grin was so big that anyone who heard it would believe it was true. Do you think Mike Fink is cool? There are countless thrilling stories waiting for you ahead. Click like, subscribe and share now to continue the journey with this talented and versatile captain. Chapter 4: Mike Fink and the Alligator Hunting Challenge. The story of Mike Fink's amazing shooting skills had spread all over the river, from the rice barges to the dilapidated waterfront taverns. But that was not enough for Mike. One hot afternoon, while lying on the raft, Mike suddenly stood up, waved his hand and ordered his friends. Listen up. It's time for Mike Fink to let the world know, in addition to shooting and rowing, I'm also the king of alligators. His friends gasped. Alligator hunting? That was a game only for the bravest of men. The giant alligators in the Mississippi River were up to 6 meters long, with razor-sharp teeth, and one mistake could cost him his life. But Mike was different. With his wild nature, the more dangerous it was, the more he enjoyed it. He stood up abruptly, clapping his hands loudly. Tonight, I challenge anyone to hunt alligators with Mike Fink. Whoever catches the most alligators will get free beer all week. The whole bar exploded with cheers. That night, under the dim moonlight, Mike and 4 young men went to the southern swamp, where alligators of all sizes were swimming. The rules were simple. Whoever caught an alligator alive and brought it back to shore before dawn would win. Mike didn't bother to bring a gun or spear. He just wore a deerskin jacket and held a sturdy rope in his hand. Looking at Mike's calm expression, his friends were both impressed and worried. As soon as the competition began, Mike Fink dove into the dark water. Everyone held their breath and watched. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Still no sign of Mike. Some of the men began to whisper worriedly, and some even planned to jump in to look for him. Then suddenly from under the water came roar. A giant black shadow emerged, thrashing violently in the white water. It was a crocodile as big as a small boat. And clinging to its back, like a wild rider, was Mike Fink. Mike shouted loudly, "Yiche!" Mike Fink is riding the crocodile. His 2 hands tightly gripped the animal's snout, the rope wrapped around its neck. The crocodile struggled wildly, thrashing the water loudly, but Mike clung on like a hungry leech. His friends were silent. No one in their life had ever seen such a crazy scene. After a while of struggling, Mike threw the crocodile's head to the shore, tying it up with a few skillful knots. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he dove back down, continuing the second battle. And so, all night long, Mike single-handedly caught 3 huge alligators, while the others were lucky to pull in one as small as a stool. As dawn broke, Mike stood on the bank, soaked in mud, grinning, holding up his victory rope. Whoever says Mike Fink is no longer the king of alligators, come forward. No one dared to say anything. They were both afraid and in awe. Mike kept his promise. He treated everyone to beer for a week. The Riverside Tavern was filled with laughter and stories about that great night of alligator hunting for several days afterward. From then on, in word-of-mouth stories throughout the West, Mike Fink was not only the king of rafting, a champion marksman, but also the first and only alligator rider of the Mississippi. Can you believe it? Mike Fink still had many more crazy acts. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe and share now to continue your adventure in his strange stories. Chapter 5. Mike Fink and the Legendary Yacht Race. After the epic alligator hunt, Mike Fink's reputation grew even more. But for Mike, life was always about new challenges. One fine morning, while sitting and sipping corn wine by the dock, Mike suddenly heard the sailors talking excitedly. "I heard there's a new sailboat in Baton Rouge. They say it's the fastest in the South." Another guy chimed in. "Yeah, it's Captain Old McCoy, is famous for being as fast as the wind. He's beaten by anyone he's challenged." Mike smirked. "The fastest? Let Mike Fink show them what fast is." Without hesitation, Mike stood up and pointed out to the river. "Get ready. Today, Mike Fink will race that sailboat. And I'll win with my own 2 hands." The whole dock was in an uproar. People flocked to see Mike Fink challenge the wind. That afternoon, the Mississippi River was boiling. On one side, the white sailboat soared high like a giant crane. On the other side, Mike Fink and his crude raft, just a few logs tied to the bow to make it easier to cut through the water. Captain McCoy stood on the deck, smiling sarcastically. "Hey buddy, racing on a raft? Why don't you bring out a sink for faster sailing?" Mike just shrugged, sneering. "Sink or raft, it's the same. As long as Mike Fink holds the oar, the wind will give way." The race began. A starting gun sounded. The sailboat shot forward like an arrow, the sails filled with wind. And Mike, holding the big, heavy oar in his hand, began to hit the water furiously. At first, the crowd laughed loudly. Who could compete with a sailboat? But after a few minutes, their smiles faded. Mike rode like a whirlwind. With each stroke, the raft shot forward like an arrow. Mike's muscular arms were like 2 giant machines, never stopping. Every time McCoy looked back, he saw the clumsy raft clinging a little closer. On the sailboat, McCoy impatiently ordered the sails to be raised, squeezing out all the wind. But it was no use. Mike Fink, with his own strength, turned the raft into a boat that hurtled across the waves. Halfway across, Mike was level with the sailboat. The cheers on the shore seemed to explode. Not willing to give up, McCoy ordered the sailors to dump a bucket of grease into the water ahead, hoping that Mike's raft would slip and veer off course. But Mike just laughed heartily, stuck his oars straight into the water, jumped over the oil slick, and landed in front as if nothing had happened. Not yet. When the water reached a rapid, McCoy swerved the sailboat, trying to push Mike away. But Mike laughed heartily. Huh? You're playing dirty? Okay. While rowing, Mike shouted loudly, using all his strength to slam the oars into the water. A wave shot straight into the sailboat, causing McCoy and the sailors to stagger. Seizing the opportunity, Mike accelerated. The raft shot forward like an arrow, straight ahead. When the finish line was only a few dozen meters away, Mike roared like thunder. Mike Fink has never lost to anyone. And that was true. When the rustic raft passed the finish line amid loud cheers, Mike Fink officially became a legend, the man who defeated the fastest sailboat in the South with only his hands and oars. McCoy, purple with shame from the defeat, quietly fled the harbor, never daring to return to the Mississippi. And Mike? He stood proudly in the middle of the raft, raised his oar in victory, and laughed loudly amid the cheers. "Oh Mississippi, from now on I am your king." Do you see the amazing strength and indomitable spirit of Mike Fink? There are many more miracles waiting for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to continue exploring together. Chapter 6: Mike Fink and the Battle with the Monster at the Bottom of the River. After the legendary boat race, Mike Fink was hailed as the hero of the Mississippi River, a man who was not only good at rowing and shooting, but also a man who was ready to face any challenge that life threw at him. But that was not enough for Mike. Anyone who saw him, friend or foe, knew that Mike Fink could not live a normal life. One afternoon, while rowing on the river, Mike heard a strange murmur. It was a sound like the wind and waves, but there was something much more strange. The sailors on the other boats heard it too. Someone looked around, then one shook his head, pointing to the bottom of the river. "That's strange. This water doesn't normally roll like that. There must be some monster down there." Mike didn't care much when he heard that. Monster? Mike had faced that countless times. But at that moment, a loud bang rang out from the bottom of the river, causing Mike's boat to sway and almost capsize. Mike glared, turning towards the sailors. "Is there something in the river? You'd better stay away. Don't bother Mike Fink." But when one of the men pointed down to the water, his face turned pale. "It's not an alligator. It's big, really big." Immediately, Mike Fink jumped into the boat, took a deep breath, and laughed loudly. "Monster? Let me see. Hey guys, whoever doesn't want to be friends with monsters, stay, and I, Mike Fink, We'll go find out what's interesting down there." Without waiting for anyone to stop him, Mike grabbed the long spear and dove into the water. The Mississippi River was always full of mysteries, and Mike had witnessed all kinds of strange creatures living there. But this time, he felt something was really different. The water was cold and dark like a bottomless abyss, but Mike was not afraid. He swam steadily in the black water, leaving only small ripples. At this moment, under Mike's feet, the water began to surge, rolling strongly like a hurricane in the river. And then, from the bottom of the river, something huge, majestic, emerged. Mike saw a giant monster, with shiny scales, sharp teeth as long as a boat. It had a long tail, writhing in the water like a giant whip. Its eyes glowed like red lights, staring at Mike. The monster was nothing like a crocodile or any other creature Mike had ever seen. It was a mysterious creature, a mix of snake and fish, a real sea monster. And it was heading towards Mike, with an expression that seemed to send him to the bottom of the river forever. Mike Fink did not hesitate. He knew that this was a life-or-death confrontation. This monster was not just a danger, but a challenge that life had set for him. With a powerful move, Mike launched himself towards the monster, the long spear in his hand stabbing straight into its body. But the monster was faster than he thought. It wriggled its huge tail, hitting Mike hard in the face. His whole body was thrown far away, but Mike did not lose his composure. He turned back immediately, took a deep breath, and then rushed into the battle without mercy. The underwater battle lasted for more than half an hour. Mike Fink showed the monster that he was a true warrior. Every time the monster rushed forward, Mike dodged and stabbed his spear deep into its body. Finally, with a powerful stab into the monster's weak abdomen, Mike defeated it. The monster twisted its body, then gradually sank to the bottom of the river, leaving a long red blood trail on the water surface. When Mike emerged from the water, he was soaked, but his eyes were still shining. All the sailors on the boats looked at him with admiration. Mike Fink stood on the boat, laughing loudly. "There, you see, monsters are nothing to Mike Fink." No one could believe it. A giant monster at the bottom of the river that Mike Fink defeated in the blink of an eye. How did you see Mike Fink fight the monster? Unbelievable, right? There are many more exciting adventures waiting for you. Please like, share, and subscribe now to explore more with me. Chapter 7: Mike Fink and the Encounter with Captain Blackbeard. After the battle with the monster at the bottom of the river, Mike Fink's reputation was further confirmed. However, not everyone was grateful to Mike for his deeds. There were those who were jealous of Mike's fame, and one of them was Captain Blackbeard, a famous man on the sea with a thick black beard and an extremely fierce personality. Blackbeard had long heard of Mike Fink, but he did not feel any respect. In his eyes, Mike was just a fool trying to build a reputation on this river. And he decided that it was time for Mike Fink to realize that, no matter how talented he was, there were still opponents that no one could confront. One morning, when Mike was stopping at a small dock, suddenly a large boat belonging to Blackbeard appeared on the river. The sailors on the boat began to jeer, and Blackbeard, standing on the deck, shouted, "Mike Fink, you are a man who has been famous all over this river, but today you will see the true power of the sea." Mike Fink, who was preparing to set sail, turned back with a determined look. He was not afraid. Instead, he approached the shore, clapped his hands on his raft, and laughed loudly. "Captain Blackbeard, do you think you can intimidate me? Whether it is the sea or the Mississippi, Mike Fink is king of all the waves." Blackbeard, angry, shouted, "Very well. Today I will show you the true power of the sea. Fight with me if you dare." Mike wasted no time. He jumped on the raft and slammed his oars into the water. Blackbeard's ship, with its huge size and full sails, began to move towards Mike, and the battle between a giant ship and a small raft was about to begin. The whole harbor seemed to be silent. Everyone stood watching with attentive eyes. Everyone knew Blackbeard was strong, but Mike Fink had overcome many challenges. Could he win this time? The confrontation between the two ships began. Blackbeard ordered the sailors to shoot fire arrows at Mike's small raft. But Mike, like a fish in water, was not worried at all. He just skillfully swung his oars, making the raft easily dodge all the arrows. Blackbeard, not satisfied with just shooting arrows, ordered the sailors to prepare the cannons. This time, gunshots rang out, and bullets were fired towards Mike's raft. But Mike Fink did not dodge. He laughed loudly, and with a strong stroke of his oar, the raft shot forward like an arrow, avoiding the bullets in a spectacular manner. Blackbeard, unable to bear Mike's persistence and talent, began to get angry. He ordered the sailors to work hard, and a more fierce attack began. However, Mike Fink was prepared. He not only relied on his strength but also used his intelligence to fight. He decided to attack Blackbeard's weak point. Mike, with his skill, suddenly turned around and started rowing in another direction, quickly hiding in an area with many reefs at the bottom. Blackbeard could not have expected Mike to do such a thing. He did not have time to react and got stuck on the rocks. With this sudden attack, Blackbeard's boat got stuck on the rocks and could not move. Mike Fink, with his calmness and intelligence, defeated this famous captain without having to confront him directly. The whole dock burst into cheers. Mike Fink once again proved that not only strength but also intelligence is the decisive factor for victory. Mike turned around, waved his hand towards the cheering sailors. "Hey, Blackbeard, never underestimate Mike Fink. River or sea, we can conquer anything." Thank you for watching the intense battle between Mike Fink and Captain Blackbeard. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue following the exciting adventures ahead. Chapter 8: Mike Fink and the Mysterious Treasure Hunt. After the battle with Captain Blackbeard, Mike Fink became even more famous. But for a man like him, fame is never enough. Mike Fink always craved a new adventure, a new challenge to prove himself. And, as always, the adventure he was about to embark on was not an ordinary trip. One morning, when Mike was resting at a tavern on the banks of the Mississippi River, a stranger walked in. It was a middle-aged man with a stern appearance, a hard face, and sharp eyes. He looked at Mike resolutely, as if he had found something very important. The man walked to Mike's desk, placed an ancient scroll map in front of him, and said, "Mike Fink, I've heard that you are a man who is not afraid of any challenge. Today, I bring you a real challenge, a challenge that no one dares to accept. This is a map that leads to a long-lost treasure." Mike looked at the map. It was old, with faded drawings, but there was something very special that made Mike feel curious. Strange lands, unexplored rivers, and signs of a hidden treasure at the bottom of the river, all seemed to be calling to him. The man continued, "This treasure has been forgotten for hundreds of years. It is said that whoever can find it will possess endless wealth. But, importantly, not everyone can survive this journey." Mike Fink laughed loudly. These words could not scare him. Difficult journey? For Mike Fink, difficulty is just an invitation. He looked at the man and replied, "Treasure? Sounds tempting. But I will not only find it, I will bring it back here and prove that nothing is impossible for Mike Fink." Mike did not waste time thinking. He quickly packed his things and set off. This journey would take him through dense forests, across wild rivers and steep cliffs. But with his familiar raft and steady hands, Mike Fink believed that nothing could stop him. The trip was not easy. On the first day, Mike had to face fierce storms. The pouring rain and strong winds made his raft sway, but Mike was determined not to give up. He steered the raft through the towering waves, heading towards unexplored lands. On the second day, Mike entered a dense forest where no one dared to set foot. The tall, ancient trees covered the sky, creating a dark, mysterious space. Mike Fink felt like he was going deep into another world, where only courage could bring him out. But then, as he went deeper into the forest, strange noises began to echo from the bushes. Something large was moving near him. Mike slowly stopped, twisted the handle of his spear, preparing for any danger. Suddenly, a giant beast jumped out of the forest. It was a black panther, with glowing red eyes and long fangs. The beast charged straight at Mike, but with his agility and skill, Mike only needed one powerful strike, stabbing the spear into the panther's body. In just a few seconds, the beast collapsed, lying still on the ground. Mike sighed, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He was not afraid of challenges, but he also knew that this journey was full of dangers. And then, after many days of overcoming difficulties, Mike Fink finally reached the treasure indicated on the map. It was a mysterious cave deep in a desolate mountain range, where no one dared to go. Mike looked into the dark cave entrance, feeling nervous and excited. He walked inside, the oil lamp in his hand emitting a dim light, illuminating the cold stone walls. Finally, after a long journey, Mike stopped in front of an ancient chest, located in the middle of the cave. He opened the chest and looked inside. Inside were shining gold coins, precious gems, and valuable antiques. Mike Fink smiled. The treasure was not just gold and silver, but all the challenges and adventures that had brought him here. He had proven that nothing was impossible for a man like Mike Fink. So Mike Fink has found the treasure that many people dream of. But his adventure is not over yet. Do you want to continue discovering more wonders with Mike? Please like, share, and subscribe to follow the next part. Chapter 9: Adventures with Pirates. After finding the treasure in the cave, Mike Fink returned to the Mississippi River, but he was not satisfied. He knew that he had proven himself capable of overcoming all challenges, but he still felt that something was missing. Mike Fink was always looking for new adventures, mysteries, and formidable opponents to challenge. And he was not one to stop until all challenges were conquered. Just as he returned to the dock, a shocking news reached Mike. A group of pirates had appeared on the Mississippi River. They were not ordinary pirates, but a dangerous gang, led by a notorious captain named Captain Redbeard. He was a brutal pirate, famous for his cruelty and strange tactics. This group of pirates attacked and robbed many ships, making life on the river extremely dangerous. And what made Mike Fink even more interested was a strange story that everyone was gossiping about Captain Redbeard. He had found a magical boat that could travel faster than any other boat. This made Mike curious. Mike Fink could not stand by and watch when he learned that these pirates were causing chaos on the river, which he had always considered his kingdom. He decided to face them, but not in the way everyone thought. Mike not only wanted to destroy the pirates, but also wanted to test his strength on Captain Redbeard's magical boat. One morning, after packing his things, Mike boarded his raft and set off. He was not alone. With him were a few old friends who had fought with him in many fierce battles. They were experienced sailors, always ready to face any challenge. Together, they headed towards the waters where Captain Redbeard's gang was said to operate. As Mike got closer, he noticed the strangeness of the area. The river waters seemed to be calmer, no longer the gentle waves like before. The atmosphere was heavy, and the sky suddenly became gloomy. Mike and his group began to feel like they were walking into a trap, but Mike Fink was not one to be easily scared. Soon, they spotted Captain Redbeard's boat, anchored near a small island. It was a large boat, with bright red sails, and a skeleton painted on the flag, symbolizing death and brutality. Captain Redbeard stood on the deck, staring at Mike. "Mike Fink, you're finally here. But do you think you can beat me and my gang on this river?" Redbeard said, his voice full of challenge. Mike was not afraid. He replied, "Pirates? To me, they are just cowards who live by robbing others. If you want to try, I am ready to show you who is the real king of the Mississippi River." As he spoke, Mike jumped onto the raft, signaling his crew to get ready. Redbeard's boat slowly moved towards them, but there was no need to rush. Mike Fink sensed that this battle would not be easy, especially since his opponent had a magical boat. As Redbeard's boat approached, Mike Fink used a surprise tactic. He split his raft into two, creating a distraction that made his opponent hesitate. Mike's crew used cannons and arrows to shoot Redbeard's boat, while Mike maneuvered his raft around his opponent's boat, tricking the opponent into running after him and getting caught on underwater rocks. Captain Redbeard, who seemed to be able to easily overwhelm Mike with his magical boat, unexpectedly got stuck. His boat hit a large reef and began to sway. Mike did not miss the opportunity, quickly rushed over and jumped onto the deck of the enemy boat. The pirates were bewildered, not knowing what to do when they saw their captain in danger. A fierce battle took place between Mike Fink and the pirates. Despite being surrounded by a large number, Mike still showed great strength and intelligence. Each of his attacks was accurate, forcing the pirates to retreat. In the end, Mike Fink defeated Captain Redbeard and his pirate group. Not only were they defeated in battle, but they also lost the magical boat that they considered a treasure. Mike Fink, once again, proved that quick-wittedness and strength will always win over cruelty. Thus, Mike Fink defeated the pirates and saved the Mississippi River. Where will this adventure take Mike next? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue following Mike Fink's journey. Chapter 10: The Battle with the Mississippi River Monster. After defeating Captain Redbeard's pirates, Mike Fink returned to his life on the Mississippi River. But that victory could not satisfy him for long, because in Mike's heart, the adventure was never really over. He always felt a thirst for new challenges, fiercer battles, and mysteries to discover. One morning, while Mike was steering his raft down the river, he heard a strange story from a fisherman. This man told of a giant monster living somewhere on the Mississippi River. According to rumors, this monster had attacked and swallowed large boats. It had a body like a dragon, with shiny silver scales and bloodshot eyes, always lurking in the darkness underwater. After hearing the story, Mike Fink could not contain his curiosity. Although he had faced countless dangers before, he had never faced such a mysterious creature. Did this monster really exist? Or was it just a story made up by people? Either way, Mike knew that if he wanted to prove himself as the strongest man on the Mississippi River, he had to find the monster and defeat it. With that determination, Mike began to plan to search for the monster. He was not going alone this time. With him were loyal companions, including a group of experienced hunters and sailors. They were fully prepared with everything from weapons to explosives, ready to deal with any danger. The journey to find the monster lasted for many days. The Mississippi River was vast and mysterious, but Mike did not give up. Night after night, he and his team rowed through small rivers, explored each island, and searched for traces of the monster. One night, as the bright moonlight reflected on the water, Mike's group began to hear strange noises. Squeaking, splashing, as if a giant creature was moving on the bottom of the river. They seemed to be approaching. Mike's heart was pounding, but he remained calm. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Suddenly, a huge wave came crashing down, causing their raft to rock. Mike Fink looked down at the water and saw the silhouette of the monster. It was huge, with silver scales that glistened in the moonlight. Its red eyes shone with a terrifying light, as if it was looking into the hearts of those facing it. The monster slowly emerged, and immediately it rushed towards Mike's raft, its sharp teeth wide open. Mike's entire group was panicking, but Mike was not afraid. He ordered everyone to be ready to fight. Guns, spears, and missiles were fired, but the monster did not flinch. The attacks only made it angrier, and it continued to charge towards them like a storm. Mike Fink knew that they could not defeat this monster with conventional weapons. He immediately ordered his teammates to retreat and quickly steered the raft away from the dangerous position. At the same time, Mike jumped into the water himself, holding a sharp spear, determined to confront the monster directly. Under the dim moonlight, Mike Fink swung his spear up, rushing at the monster. Fierce attacks took place underwater. The monster stretched its body, trying to catch Mike, but with unparalleled courage and strength, Mike Fink continuously dodged its powerful attacks. The underwater battle lasted for minutes. Even though the monster was strong and agile, Mike Fink did not give up. With a decisive stab, he pierced through the monster's scales, hitting its heart. The monster let out a terrible roar, then slowly sank into the water, losing its vitality. Mike Fink, although tired and bloody, still stood firm. He had defeated a legendary creature that many feared. And once again, Mike Fink proved that nothing could defeat him. Mike's group hurriedly rowed closer. Everyone could not believe what they had just witnessed. They had not only survived, but also destroyed the giant monster. Mike Fink, with a victorious smile, turned to his teammates and said, We have won. But don't think that's all. This adventure has only just begun. So Mike Fink had defeated the legendary monster. But his journey was not over yet. Let's wait for the next challenges in this thrilling adventure. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any part of the story. Chapter 11. The Search for the Lost Treasure. After defeating the giant monster on the Mississippi River, Mike Fink returned to his normal life, but in his heart, the adventures never stopped. The feeling of conquering the monster did not satisfy him, but on the contrary, it only urged him to find new challenges. One day, while resting in a small town by the river, Mike heard a story about a legendary treasure that no one had been able to find for a long time. The story originated from a remote village, where the natives said that a river god had hidden a giant treasure underground, protecting it with curses and difficult challenges. Many people tried to find this treasure, but all failed and no one returned. Mike Fink, with his never-ending desire, immediately decided to set out. Treasure was not something he lacked, but for Mike, every challenge was an opportunity to prove himself the strongest. He prepared an expedition consisting of old friends and experienced hunters, ready to face any danger. Their journey began in a deep canyon in the jungle, where no one dared to enter. The humid heat of the jungle made everything heavy and difficult to breathe, but no one in the group showed weakness. Mike Fink took the lead, constantly searching for traces of the legendary treasure. With every step, he kept an eye on the smallest details around him, knowing that the treasure would never be easy to find. By mid-afternoon, they discovered a giant rock with ancient characters engraved on it. One of the hunters recognized this as the first sign of the treasure they were looking for. Mike signaled everyone to stop, then walked closer to the rock, gently stroking the characters. He realized that it was a warning, an ancient spell, saying that those who seek the treasure will face 3 difficult tests: strength, wisdom, and courage. Only those who overcome all 3 tests will find the treasure. Each member of the group looked at each other, wondering if they had the strength to overcome the 3 tests. But Mike Fink was not one to be easily discouraged. He looked at his friends, then determined to continue the journey. They began to cross dangerous streams, dense forests, and rugged mountains, constantly moving forward even though they knew that the challenge had only just begun. After several days of overcoming obstacles, they came to a desolate area where only darkness covered them. Here, they discovered a dark cave, the entrance of which was guarded by a dark monster with fiery red eyes. This monster was unlike any creature Mike had ever encountered. It was 3 times as tall as a horse, with huge wings and a jaw as sharp as a knife. Everyone in the group was scared, but Mike Fink smiled confidently. "This is the first test. Strength," Mike said, his eyes shining. With all his strength, Mike rushed to fight the monster. facing the terrible power of the beast, Mike still kept his spirit. He used his spear to stab the weak points on the monster's body. The fight lasted for hours, and finally, Mike defeated it with a fatal blow, causing the monster to fall and stop moving. Everyone in the group looked at Mike with admiration, but they knew that the second test was really difficult. They continued to go deeper into the cave, where the light was getting dimmer. In the darkness, Mike and his group discovered a large trap. This was the second test, intelligence. To overcome it, they must decipher an ancient riddle carved into the cliff. The riddle is about a mysterious lock that can only be opened if the right key is found. Mike and his team must work together to deduce and test ways to open the lock. After many hours of searching, they finally solve the riddle and open the door to the treasure. When the cave door opens, they enter a large room, and in the middle is an ancient wooden chest. On the lid of the chest is engraved a line: "Only those with courage are worthy to receive the treasure." Mike Fink does not hesitate. He goes to open the chest. Inside are sparkling gold coins, precious stones, and priceless items. So Mike Fink and his team have overcome the challenge and found the legendary treasure. What will their next adventure be? Like, share, and subscribe to not miss the next parts of the story. Chapter 12. Adventure into the Forbidden World. After finding the legendary treasure in the cave, Mike Fink and his team became famous in the area. However, not long after, a new adventure called them. Mike Fink was always looking for new challenges and unsolved mysteries, and one day, he heard a mysterious story from a stranger in a tavern. The stranger told of a distant land, called the Forbidden World. It was a place that no one dared to set foot in, because there existed monstrous creatures and dark forces that even the natives did not dare to tell. According to the stranger, the Forbidden World was located behind a high mountain range, where no one had ever returned. Although the story seemed fantastical, to Mike Fink, this was all the more appealing. A forgotten world, full of mystery and danger, was definitely a challenge not to be missed. Immediately, Mike Fink decided to set out, along with his loyal group of friends. They prepared all the necessary food, weapons, and tools to face the unknown. The journey began from a small town, where they had to cross a large river, then pass through dense forests before facing the towering mountain range. The journey became more arduous when they faced harsh natural challenges. Rainstorms lasted for many days, making it impossible for everyone to continue moving quickly. However, Mike did not show any discouragement. On the contrary, he became more determined. He knew that only by overcoming all difficulties could he reach the place where many others had failed. Finally, after many days of crossing deep forests and mountains, Mike's group finally reached the foot of the high mountain range, where people rumored to be the Forbidden World. Here, they encountered a small village of natives. The villagers did not welcome Mike's group. They looked at them with fear, as if aliens had just entered their territory. An elder of the village came to Mike and warned him, "You cannot enter there. The Forbidden World is a place of dead souls, where all secrets and evils are kept. Those who dare to enter there will never return." Mike Fink was not afraid of the warning. He knew that these stories were just legends, and he still believed in his power. He thanked the elder and continued to lead his group up the mountain, not letting the warning discourage him. As they climbed to the top of the mountain, the scenery gradually changed. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a hazy mist covered everything around them. At some point, they realized that they had left the normal world and entered a completely different land. Below them was a vast valley, with giant rocks and strange trees. The scenery here seemed to not belong to this world, dark and full of horror. Mike Fink and his group continued to advance into the valley. Every step they took was like entering a strange world, where everything could change unexpectedly. They encountered strange creatures, from giant monsters with tree-like bodies to giant snakes that could swallow a person in a blink of an eye. However, Mike and his friends were not discouraged. They fought with all their strength, constantly overcoming challenges and dangers to move forward. One dark night, while they were resting under a giant tree, a strange noise rang out from deep in the forest. Mike Fink woke up, his eyes shining with alertness. He ordered everyone to get ready. Just a moment later, a giant black shadow appeared, approaching their group. It was a giant monster, shaped like a giant bird but with glowing red eyes and sharp claws. It rushed towards Mike's group at a terrifying speed, leaving no one time to react. However, Mike Fink was not afraid. He quickly drew his sharp sword and rushed to confront the monster. The battle between them was fast and fierce. Although the monster was very powerful, Mike used all his skills and strength to defeat it. When the last monster was defeated, Mike's group breathed a sigh of relief. But they knew that this was just one of many challenges they had to face in the Forbidden World. And although they had defeated the monster, they had yet to find the legendary treasure they were looking for. So Mike Fink's adventure continues, and the challenges become more and more fierce. Can they overcome them all? Like, share and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of the story. Chapter 13. Entering the Dark World. After a fierce battle with a giant monster, Mike Fink and his group continued their journey into the Forbidden World. Although they had won one of the most terrifying challenges, they still knew that this was just the beginning of a dangerous and mysterious journey ahead. No one in the group dared to think that what they had experienced was just the prelude to worse things waiting. The valley where they were moving became darker and more eerie. Dark clouds swirled in the sky, blocking the sunlight, making everything around them plunge into darkness. The tall ancient trees grew crowded together, reaching out like monstrous hands, broken and dilapidated, as if they had existed for thousands of years and witnessed countless mysterious events. Eerie whistling sounds echoed from all directions, making the surrounding air thick and heavy. While everyone in the group tried to keep their spirits up, Mike Fink couldn't help but feel a strange feeling enveloping them. Although he was a seasoned veteran and not afraid of any challenge, this time, something darker and more sinister awaited him ahead. Passing through dense forests and streams filled with mist, Mike's group stopped at a strange area. Before them was a giant stone wall, completely blocking their view. On the wall, there were carved strange symbols and ancient writings that no one in the group could understand. Mike looked at the stone wall, then looked at his friends. This is the third challenge: wisdom and courage. Only those with enough inner strength can overcome this wall. After a while of careful observation, Mike realized that the stone wall was more than just an ordinary roadblock. It was a door, but it would only open if they could decipher the riddles carved into it. Each question was a challenge to the group's intellect. To open the door, they had to overcome a series of riddles about history, about mythical creatures, and even questions about courage. However, as soon as they began to decipher the riddles, the stone wall began to shake, as if something was awakening from deep within. The noise grew louder, and a sound rose from the cracks in the stone, as if an inaudible voice was whispering. The group stood rooted to the spot, afraid to move. But Mike Fink did not allow fear to stop his journey. He picked up a small piece of stone and began to experiment with the riddles on the wall. After a while, he realized that each riddle required not only intelligence, but also self-knowledge and courage. Finally, when the last riddle was solved, the stone wall began to move, slowly opening a path leading to a land darker than ever. The air in this area was thick, as if something huge was waiting ahead. Mike Fink and his group stepped in, their eyes gradually adjusting to the darkness. Suddenly, a dim light appeared before their eyes. It was a sparkling lamp, hanging in the middle of space, illuminating the surrounding area. As they approached, the light brightened and revealed a large metal door, with strange symbols engraved on its surface. Before anyone could speak, a cold voice rang out from the door. Only those brave enough to open this door can enter. To enter, you must be willing to give up the most precious thing you have. Mike Fink stood silently, thinking for a moment. This was a real test, not only of their minds but also of their souls. The threat of loss, of sacrifice, was not something that could be easily faced. But, as always, Mike Fink never backed down. He looked at his friends, then smiled confidently. "We have overcome many challenges. It is time to accept the trade-off. It is the only way forward." With the determination not to retreat, Mike Fink walked towards the door and placed his hand on it. Suddenly, the door began to open, as if waiting for them. Passing through the door, Mike's group entered another world, a vast, empty space filled with strange images that they had never seen before. Everything here seemed like a dream, and mysterious creatures were watching them from afar. Mike Fink was undaunted. He knows that something greater is waiting for them ahead. Will they be able to overcome all the challenges that lie ahead and discover the secrets behind this dark world? Like, share and subscribe so you don't miss the next part of Mike Fink's exciting adventure. Chapter 14: The Final Challenge. Passing through the strange metal door, Mike Fink's group entered a space they had never imagined. Before them was a mysterious world, completely separate from everything they had known. This was not a forest, not a cave. It was a vast space, like an ancient temple, with strange black stone walls, light shining from somewhere, creating long shadows on the ground. All around them were strange shapes, ancient symbols that the naked eye could not understand. This entire space seemed to have existed for thousands of years, silent and mysterious. Every step they took echoed, as if they were entering a place that did not belong to humans. Mike Fink stood in the middle, feeling the difference clearly. All his senses were on alert. A strong feeling urged him to continue. Some force, invisible and powerful, seemed to be guiding them. But at the same time he could feel the threat lurking, as if there were creatures in the darkness watching and waiting for an opportunity. "Be careful," Mike said softly, looking around. Just then, a sound rang out from the black stone wall itself. Cracks in it began to split, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes. A strange voice, unlike any the group had ever heard, rang out from those cracks. "Who dares to enter this world? Remember, only those who can give their hearts can go further." Mike Fink refused to panic. He knew that this was the final test the group would face. Not of strength, nor of intelligence. The final test was a test of courage, of personal sacrifice for the greater good. He turned back to look at his teammates, and in their eyes, he saw the same determination. "We're here. Don't let anything stop us. Keep going," Mike said, his voice determined. His group continued to move forward. Immediately, the large door in front of them slowly opened, revealing another space, dark and nothing could be seen except for strange moving figures. Stepping inside, they felt a sudden change. The air became cold, as if a dark power was spreading everywhere. Strange shapes began to appear. They were unidentifiable creatures, without clear shapes, but all exuded a terrible threat. These creatures were like ghosts. They moved step by step, emitting terrifying sounds. Mike and his group continued to walk, each step echoing in the quiet space like a challenge to confront fear. As they went deeper inside, a dim light appeared, illuminating part of the space before them. It was an ancient altar, on which was a shining gem, looking like a priceless gem. This gem radiated a strange light, attracting everyone's attention. Mike Fink stepped forward, his eyes shining when he saw the gem. He realized that this was the reward they had been searching for all this time, the treasure they had dreamed of. But just as he reached out to touch the gem, a voice rang out again. This is the moment you face a choice. Only one person can possess this gem. And that person will have to sacrifice the most precious thing in their lives. The mysterious voice continued. If you decide to possess the gem, you will gain limitless power, but at the same time you will lose a part of your soul. This is the price to pay. Mike Fink did not hesitate for a second. He knew that these words were just a final test. He looked at the gem, then turned to look at his friends. Their hopeful eyes, their unwavering determination, made him understand that he could not let greed control him. No, we do not need this power. We need freedom and courage, Mike said, his voice firm. He turned and walked away, leaving the alluring gem behind. At the same time, the space around them gradually changed. The ghosts and strange creatures disappeared. The air returned to normal, and a new door opened, leading them outside. As they passed through the last door, Mike Fink turned back for one last look. It seems that the space they just passed through is no longer a forbidden world, but has become a memory of sacrifice, of courage and wisdom in choice. Mike Fink's journey has ended. They not only found treasure, but also found greater values throughout this adventure. Please like, share and subscribe to continue following Mike Fink's exciting stories and other adventures.